Tecumseh Instigator Talk Show, episode 6. We got John Schmid, right? You're on the school board.
Yes, sir. 6 months in.
6 months in. How are you
Six
liking
months
it?
in. How do I like it? I really like it. It's one of those things like, how much do school board members get paid? Does anybody know?
$0.
Zero. It's all volunteerism. That's one of the things that I've learned is, not learned that I know, but just come to really respect that people who are volunteering like that, whether you agree with them or you don't agree with them, it's volunteering that to that extent deserves respect.
For sure.
I agree.
Not everybody's gonna volunteer for a job like
No.
that, you know what I mean? And sometimes you don't get the right guy or the right gal to volunteer for a job like that either. So
And how I kind of got interested in the school board part is I was on the first steering committee in 2020 a little bit, and we had, I want to say, 6 meetings approximately, and they were pretty lengthy meetings, and that was a volunteer sort of thing also.
and what were those meetings for?
On the facilities. So
Okay.
this was the lead up to the first $42 million bond that ultimately failed. And this was the lead up to it. And one of the things, sitting in these meetings at the time back in the steering meetings, one of the take home messages that I had was you had very intelligent people. Like you had 15 to 20 very intelligent people sitting. Now, did I agree with them all the time? No. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did I respect, and recognize it, and that's maybe for me a little bit, the first $42 million bond, was it perfect? No. I mean, is there going to be a bond that's going to be perfect? I'm going to tell you, no. It's more along the lines of, can I live with it? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the moving forward part, I guess that's kind of my mindset on that deal. But it's just and part of the thing on the first, and please, Eric, don't let me just get rambling like
Go
crazy.
for
No,
it.
this is
That is
perfect.
why
This
you're
is
here.
perfect. This is what we wanted.
This is the part of the lead up. So, like on that first failed bond, some of the stuff that I worked on personally was just the makeup of the district as far as the dollars and cents. Like everybody pretty well recognized, we all recognize here that property taxes locally, like we're paying for our school here, like to the max, the maximum possible, like the equalized district part. You know what I'm saying? And part of the lead up that we worked on, I personally helped work on in the first bond, was the makeup of that property. So like the makeup, what's the value of Tecumseh, for
Right.
example? What's the value of Cook? And it's pretty fascinating that at that time in 2020, the average home value in Cook was actually like $20,000 higher than Tecumseh. The total, and to break it down a little bit further, then how this plays into how that bond would have been paid for is the tax rate. So you have ag land out here taxed at 70%, except for new bonds due to our legislature and their wonderful thinking. They decided, well, no, on new bonds, we're only going to tax ag land at 50%. Sounds great, doesn't it? I mean, it sounds great. Sound great to you? The problem with that is that people don't, in the meantime, your residential, commercial, I believe they're still getting taxed at 97%. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So to break it down, the total makeup at that time, and this is approximate, ballpark figures, okay, from memory, but taxing authority that the JCC district had at that time was approximately $800 million worth of real estate that we had taxing authority over, of which it was approximately, ballpark figures here, 3/4 of that is coming from ag land. Only about a quarter, or not even a quarter, comes from your homes, your houses. Comes to Cook, and how that goes into play is the legislature passed this law, and I can't think what the legislative law was. But prior to that law, you would be able to tax, so in this case, I'm using 3/4, 800 million, 600 million of ag land, 200 million. You're being able to tax at 97%. 600 million, instead of being able to tax at 70%, you would only be able to tax at 50%. And part of the problem at that time, as I seen it, is that your taxing authority on that 600 million would go to 300 million instead of maintaining that 420. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Therefore, you lengthen the term of the bond, and the district patrons as a whole, we would end up paying more because of the interest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're lengthening that time out.
Right.
What is the bond sitting at right now, roughly? I mean, it has to be over 50 now. If we
Well,
go
I
that-
mean,
if
so-
you go that full, if you go the full on construction.
So
bond.
what I will tell you is what we've been working on here. The first 6 months is like we've been. I mean, it's the first. Here's how it went. The first school board meeting we get sworn into, and I believe that first meeting, like we hired Mr. Dammy as a principal. Our feet got put to the fire
Yep.
pretty quick, you know,
Yeah.
and it's okay. It's all good. You know what I mean? But it's so it's one of those things. Is like decisions have to be made, and you hope that you're making the right decision. You know what I mean? That's just kind of my thought. And that's where this is where like the district. You have 6 very good, myself, and you have 5 other very good board members, and it's the same principle. Do I always agree with him? No, but have we had some very good discussions? I will tell you, like the discussions that we've held in these first meetings since I've been on versus I sat in on with the previous board half a dozen meetings last year. I mean, I'm telling you, things are getting discussed. Like we are working, and it's all very respectful. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of the deal. But to update on the bond here, this go around, like you're not going to be doing a $50 million.
It's kind of
I'm
what I
highly,
figured.
highly confident of that. Like so, basically, we've spent some money. There's projects going on in the high school. And state fire marshal and code. So think state fire marshal and code. I believe, John, you had brought up renovation. Renovation
Yep.
cost, yes. So that's one thing that I will tell you that I picked up on a little bit is renovation versus like code and state fire marshal items, right?
Right.
When you actually break things down, code, state fire marshal, we have to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes,
And then, in my
100%.
opinion, there's no reason to not do those. And part of that is like we've approved a sprinkler system to go into the high school. When you actually look at different public places, sprinkler systems, it's very simple. Now, is it probably ever going to save lives? You know what I mean? Well, that's very debatable. But I will tell you, yes, the
Well, it'll
courthouse,
save infrastructure overall too.
it would save infrastructure, correct. And this is one thing I've actually started watching is how many buildings actually have sprinkler systems in it. Our courthouse has sprinkler systems in it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And different schools around, they do. I mean,
Yeah.
so we've approved the sprinkler system. There's an HVAC project going on. There's several little board meetings that are going to be, or a couple little board meetings, like we're going to be doing a chiller and cook. But I feel like I'm very long-winded here on the.
No, you're good, you're good.
No, this is
If,
perfect.
if I
perfect.
have questions,
Very
so fucking-
informational,
yeah.
And part of the deal is so like we know we've had 2 failed bonds, and I will tell you, like myself, I voted for the first bond, and this is to keep into perspective when it comes to, do you own property? Do you own property? Do you own property? How much property do you own? Are you renting? Your rent might go up some. You know what I mean? It's going to trickle down should said bond pass. But the point I'm trying to make here is that keep into perspective what you personally would have to pay if you don't own a lot of real estate versus what the ag person is going to be writing the check.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's one of those things to where, this is part of the other thing, like to bring it full circle back around is, like I'm a self-employed farmer, and the 1031 exchange. I hate the 1031 exchange. Does everybody know what the 1031
No.
exchange is?
Educate
What's
us,
that?
please.
You have no clue.
No.
Okay, so the 1031 exchange, when you think about Johnson County in the JCC district, the 1031 exchange is a tax law that dates back to 1921 that says if we're in Omaha or LinkedIn or Kansas City and we have property that's in suburban, where it's being encroached on, if we can sell that acre for $200,000, we can sell that acre in that part of the world for $200,000. We can come down here to Johnson County and purchase real estate for $4,000 an acre. We can do that capital gains free.
Oh, so it's
Capital
a
gains
likewise
free.
exchange, like a 1035.
Well, I can't speak to that. I don't know about that, I guess. But it's capital gains. My point is capital gains. You have individuals, and when you think about Johnson County, who actually owns the real estate? This is one thing I put a lot of thought into. Who actually owns the real estate?
Dean Allen.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the point.
yeah,
Big
the
time
point-
farmer.
You have a lot of money that's came in from other parts of the world
Yeah.
and invested
Mhm.
here in Johnson County
Mhm.
in the JCC district. Where does all of our money go then? You know, it's one of those things. The free, you know, the it's slipping me.
No, you're good.
No,
You're good.
you're
You're good. Like I say, we edit, so it's good.
When all the money, you know, if you have people that live, say, in Lincoln and Omaha, and they own real estate here via a rental house or a piece of ag ground, most likely those people are still living in Lincoln and Omaha.
Yep.
So the money, you harvest the money off of the property here, and it goes somewhere else.
Yep.
Exactly.
Tax free.
Yep.
Tax free. And that's my thing. And this is where, like, you folks need to understand. I want people to understand, especially you guys is our age that do not own a lot of real estate, that's killing our local economy.
Yes, it is.
It's killing it because you keep sending money out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's so hard to be self-employed. It's so hard to be a local business person. You know what I mean? A 40-something making a living. You know, that's just kind of that's kind of the deal, and that's some of the reason for that. So my thing, part of my thing, and this was in my propaganda during the run-up to the election, was like, why? You know, those folks, if they're paying the property tax, they help drive up the real estate values here.
Yep.
And we've chosen as society to not keep our public infrastructure up, whether it be our county bridges out here,
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Roads.
our public schools, you know, roads, correct. We haven't kept them up. And it's by our own choosing. And this is a question that I asked myself in the first steering committee, was who's the biggest winner? When we choose to keep our taxes dirt cheap, you know, because, we can't afford it, this, that, the other, you know what I mean? The biggest winners are the folks who have came down here, they purchased the real estate and haul the money somewhere else. They don't have kids going to school here. What do they care? You know what I mean? So this is where it comes to finding the happy medium as far as what we can afford, what's reasonable, and you know, and I'll do the best job, I guess. You know, why I brought up reasonable, a term that I have coined a little bit, reasonable expectation. You know, when we come across different problems, what's reasonable expectation?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I ask myself, I guess.
Yeah, because obviously people's expectations are always higher than like what the reasonable expectation is,
And that's
for the most part.
that's kind of what I think that's where the first bond got in trouble just a little bit, is like, just keep adding on and adding on. We needed the auxiliary gym. We needed, you know, other stuff. You know what I mean? And it just, when you keep adding on, and it comes down to, you know, I will tell you, like the school's attorney in training before we went on to the board, we had a brief training session, or a couple-hour training session. The school's attorney came down, and he had a quote that's going to stick with me. That it comes down to, what should my priority be? What should our first priority as a board person? What should it be? And you have any idea? What's your first priority? What it should be?
What you can do
Quality
to
education.
help? Yeah.
Educate the students.
Yep.
The education of the students. That should
There
be
you go.
priority number one. You know what I mean? And this is where, like I said, society, like our priorities have kind of gotten mixed up a little bit, or they've gotten blurred. The lines of priority.
Oh no, I agree with that completely. Like you say with the bond measures, it's fascinating to me because it seems like we're going to go towards the method of not renovating, but maybe do, you know, I guess my mindset was like an addition to the high school or something along those lines. Because the elementary building, you know, anybody in their right state of mind, I don't care who you are, the elementary building needs to go. It's too old.
I agree, 110%.
Like that building, it's done for. And then Cook, I know Cook has some. Does Cook still have the roofing issue?
So we actually, the roofs have been taken care of, and they got
that's good.
taken care of at a pretty reasonable, very reasonable expense for. We were told like 5 years, like we're good to go for 5 years.
All right.
And for what that's worth, that's been dealt with a little bit. So I'm glad that you brought up the high school and stuff. So like I've told you that we're going to spend some money on the high school.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to spend some money on the high school. We've already approved that. Some of the projects have went on this summer, and they're going to carry over into next summer. It's like 2 full years to do the HVAC, the fire marshal,
it's not
you
an
know,
overnight type
or
thing.
not the fire marshal, but the sprinkler, and yeah. So the building, okay, the high school building, where you brought up the high school building, and this is how I've evolved a little bit, I guess. And I was on the school owns quite a bit of property, okay.
Yeah.
And to keep this into perspective, this is one thing that I have worked on as far as like you own the buildings, Okay, but it's hard to wrap your mind around what we have versus different designs that get put in front of us. So kind of what we've worked on a little bit is just plain classroom square footage. It goes back to what's the number one thing we're doing. We're educating students. So like classroom square footage, okay? This is where it's fascinating. These are ballpark numbers, okay? But I'm going to tell you like I'm relatively close. The elementary building only has 6,600 classroom square feet. The high school building is about 15,000. The facility up at Cook is 16,000 square feet of classroom space. You know,
Wow.
when you think about that, and there's I'm not going to go too far into this because I'll end up getting myself in trouble.
That's why we're here.
We're not going to edit that.
Well, that's just fine. Yeah. But my point is I'm telling you that we have plenty of square footage. Currently, for our student populace, we have ample square footage. And, you know, it goes back to the taxpayer and that term, reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
What's reasonable?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so when you have excess square footage, which I'm going to tell you that we do, you know, and it's just like you said, does it make sense to tear the elementary building down? Absolutely. This is where I've evolved a little bit. I was not for the 52-acre purchase. Okay, and I'm going to correct you a little bit from the previous episode.
Awesome.
It's the right to purchase. Like we're not paying rent, but it's actually the previous board had entered into agreement to every year or two is what it was. They would pay an additional dollar amount to continue that right to purchase for a couple more years. The set price is there, and it's still set the same. We're coming up on a deadline here in December to either we're going to purchase it, or if we want to keep that option, like we have to pay more money.
What is the rough purchase price?
800,000.
That's not.
You know,
I
and
mean,
this-
in the grand scheme of things, that's not too bad.
Not today. I mean, it's one of those things to where that number really, that's a ballpark. I'm not exactly for sure, but 800,000 is West Penn, Pennsylvania, I believe. And think about how much things have changed now versus 5 years ago.
Oh,
How much things have just went,
it's
through the
going.
roof.
Yeah.
you know, and so it's one of those things where like I initially was not a 52-acre type of person. You brought up the high school. Like I'm telling you, we're spending some money on the high school. The one design that I really kind of liked was the wraparound design of the high school. There was actually a design to where the boiler room is. They were actually going to cut into the hill and build their gymnasium in the hill.
That'd be pretty cool.
I thought it'd be pretty cool, you know. And I had this brought to my attention because this person was right. The problem with that design is if you build from the north parking lot all the way around to the west and back south in between the buildings, the problem with that is that you have that 60-year-old building sitting back in there
Yep.
that you can't get to.
Exactly.
When you got to do some heavy machinery, and I had never thought about that until this just came to my attention, you know. And this person brought this up, and he's very good about it, honestly, and he's 110% right, you know. So is that really feasible or the right thing to do? You know, when you're building. So that's where I've kind of evolved a little bit, to where the 52 acres is probably. I look for some action on that. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I think there's going to be some action coming very shortly on that deal.
I mean, you're talking what, $4,000 to $6,000 an acre, roughly.
Well, I mean, it's like 15,000.
I mean, and like I said, that's unfortunately not even necessary.
Not even 15. I
If you
guess.
guys went out and say you bought 52 acres and we're in a standstill for 10 more years, what can
Well,
you
I
do
mean,
with that
there's
land in
ag
10
ground
years?
out here. There's ag ground that'll sell for
Exactly.
10 or 12,000 down by Upkirk. It just
Oh, I
know.
will-
So this is where things have changed tremendously the last 4 or 5 years. You know, part of that thing. Do I recognize personally? Do we need 52 acres? No, we don't. You know, I don't feel like we do. We need it all, and I would think that we'll probably be open to selling some of it off. But this is just me speaking. Nothing board action is taking place on this deal. Okay, that's the deal.
Can I ask you a dumb question?
Yes, and there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Oh,
there,
yeah.
Mr.
No,
Brown.
I've had dumb questions. But I don't want to fight about it. But the scoreboard thing.
The scoreboard
I'm
thing.
I'm an idiot, so I don't know how to argue with you.
So I will tell you, I will explain the scoreboard. The scoreboard, the previous board approved the scoreboard. It was one of the last things that the previous board approved. And I personally had nothing to do with that. And it's one of those things where it was sold as Eric Bell, Maple Grove Hay. You've been promoting Maple Grove Hay. Your dad can go and buy a sponsorship to go on the lower tier of that scoreboard. The
Yeah.
idea is over time, the sponsorships that would be sold off of that scoreboard would pay for the scoreboard. That's what the idea was. That, and combined with the Strive program, which is fantastic, that's where I feel like the previous board seen the value in the scoreboard.
Were there a lot of like leads for sponsors before that?
I can't speak to that, I guess.
Like,
I
who
sat
are-
in on the meeting and maybe one or two. I mean, I guess I shouldn't speak to that because I don't know.
I'd say there's probably about half a dozen businesses in town that usually, you know, they pocket out their money, right? I know Tecumseh Federal Bank's a really good one.
Yeah.
I know they've given,
Brinkman's.
you know, they've given Brinkman's is another one, and
Mhm.
you know, like I say, that's a
I mean, and it's one of those things where, like, you know, you've seen this. I don't know so much at Sterling, but I do know here, like, you know, the donations, the fees, and stuff.
Yep.
Those are things that just add up, and it drives a person crazy. You know
Oh, yeah.
what I mean, and that's at least it drives me crazy sometimes. You know, so it's just again, it's finding the medium. You know what I mean, and that's just kind of the deal.
It's a hard medium to find.
Well, it is.
Mm.
It's a very hard medium to find. You know, and
That's the goal, but
and Johnson County Central is still an equalized school district, right?
as far as like, yes, the
For
property
the-
tax,
for the-
we're
yeah,
paying,
property
we're
tax
paying the
purposes, yes.
maximum. Yes.
And then now I have another question about the Cook site because I know they have those two giant propane tanks. Are they really LP gas there?
It's propane, correct. So like we actually did, if you this is what I encourage you folks
Yep.
to pay attention to the meeting minutes.
Oh, I read them all the time.
It was in the meeting minutes here a couple weeks ago. We actually bid the propane up there at Cook and stuff, and yes, it's a very sizable amount of propane. There, we're heating off of propane up at Cook.
Because there's no natural gas at all. Black Hills doesn't operate in Cook at all.
Okay, I mean,
I
I guess
mean-
I can't speak to that.
Oh.
But what I can speak to you is that we did vote. They did RFPs for the Cook propane bid, and we had two bids. And that's just the deal. So I mean, it's good to get a couple bids. That's
No,
what I got.
exactly.
And that's I mean, I think it's very good.
But like I say, I know JCC's equalized because I know what we've been equalized for quite a while now. I mean, it's been over a decade since we've lost a lot of our state fund. Actually, I think we were in high school when they
Correct.
lost a ton of our state
So
funding.
part of the reason, so to back up there a little bit, like I'm cousins with the previous board president of the time of merger. Okay,
I think, is that Mr. Nolte?
Mr. Nolte, correct. I mean,
Side note,
did
he
you know
agreed.
this?
He's agreed to do this.
So this is part of
Maybe.
the deal. This is part of the deal. The logic that has been passed forward to me at the time. When you think back to the time, part of the reason for the merger was because they were worried about state aid cuts.
Yep.
And you're widening your property base out that way. That's what the thought was. Now, was that correct? Well, you know, I don't know. Hindsight's always 20/20, right? You know, so you just do the best you can, and it's a lesson of life. You know, things happen. You move forward.
Yeah.
You just can't constantly be looking over
Yeah.
your shoulder.
Well,
you
like-
have to move forward.
That's something I do give Johnson County Central a ton of credit for is they prepared for the equalization because I know not to bash Pawnee City, but that was one of their big issues is they went full equalized and when I had the paper down there. That was
Mhm.
their first year of it, and they were almost in a full panic about it because they didn't realize. Because I mean, they went from, and I don't think they were getting much in state funding. You know, I think they're
So
getting.
this is the deal is like we're getting ready to work on the budget here this year. Mr. Arthur's been working on it very hard, and the constraints like you can't the budget authority and then the levy limit. Okay,
Yep.
The budget authority is constrained the JCC district to where we will, as I understand it, we will never be able to hit the $5 levy limit. We are constrained by our budget authority. Is the deal, as I understand it.
Yes. And they just changed a ton of those levy laws, gosh, in the last 3-4 years too. I mean, they had a ton of them because I know, like I say, I used to follow Pawnee City School Board because of the paper down there, and that was one of their big. They were almost blindsided by it because they had their, I guess, their viewpoint is the state's going to change the law and they're going to get us state funding somehow, and then you know, then that's what broke a lot of school districts throughout
Right.
the state was you had some that adopted this idea of, oh, the money's going to come in somehow. They're going to have no choice but to fix this. And then, you know, if you look back at some of the old newsletters, which are on the JCC website, I mean, go back clear to 2007, you have Mr. Moles the whole entire time talking about that levy.
Mhm.
Which, not to change the subject 180 degrees here, but how do you feel about 3 new principals starting tomorrow?
I was gonna ask
So
the same
the
thing.
principal,
Three
I
of
will
them?
tell you
Three.
the mindset behind adding the elementary principal back a little bit is, and it goes back to reasonable expectation. Okay, reasonable expectation. Is it reasonable for Mr. Rother to continue with doing superintendent duties, and we have to go chase little Jimmy and Jill around because they're having a bad day? You know, and at the same time keep up with the legislative changes in law, meet the budget authority. It comes down to
Coach
reasonable.
football.
Coach football,
Yeah.
drive the bus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It
Man of
comes
many
down to, and
trades.
he's been doing all of this stuff, and it comes down to reasonable expectation a little bit. And you know, we've had 2 failed bonds, and it's one of those things. Elections have consequences. That's my thought. You know, and you as a district, do we want to continue to be inefficient? Well, we've had 2 failed bonds. You know, and in full disclosure, I voted for the first bond. The second bond, I did not vote. I voted not to vote. The reason behind that is because it is perfectly legal in a mail-in election for the county clerk. If you called the county clerk, who's voted and who hasn't voted? The county clerk releases. It's perfectly legal for them to release it.
Yep.
And
They knocked on your door too, didn't they?
well, I mean, I'm not going to speak to any of that deal, okay? But what I'm going to say is that I was just when you have that happen in my mind, you lose the integrity of the election. You know what I mean? And
I agree.
so this is where I was very frustrated and angry, honestly. And I took my unopened ballot and I marched it. I put effort into not voting. I marched it to the courthouse and I threw it on the desk and I walked out. You know, and I just wasn't happy. And should I have done it that way? No, probably not. But it's just some of the deal. Like I just wasn't happy about it. You know, and because I don't know. So yeah.
Like I say, I'm in full agreement. Something needs to be done. It's just a matter of how to do it. Like I say, my pipe dream, and I'll tell you, my pipe
Reasonable
dream,
expectations.
Yeah.
Correct.
and my pipe dream, which I wish was reasonable, would be increase the tax base. Like you said, you know, why I've looked at
This is where you have to work on Eric and chicken barns and stuff because they bring money in and
I live next door. I live next door to a chicken barn, and I don't recommend anybody to live next door to
well,
one.
and it's one of
I
those
don't live that
things.
close to them, and they're
You know,
still
Yeah, you're
disturbing.
You're straight north.
You
It's-
smell. I mean,
In the
you get a
summer,
south
that
wind.
stinks.
Holy crap!
Mine are over here.
Do they bother you? Do you smell them here? Honestly,
He can't.
my point.
Like once every 2 weeks.
I mean,
It's pretty
and
bad.
that's the deal. Is like we're in rural Nebraska out here. We're in rural Nebraska.
Yep.
We are. You know,
Yeah.
and we're gonna do some stuff that might smell funny from time to time. And should it be every day? No, it shouldn't be every day. You know, I don't think it should be. And that's where that's for me personally bringing up the chicken barns a little bit. In the zoning part, this is where like I was very the chicken barn permit that got approved here at the end of the year. I was very much in favor of that. And what's really hurt my feelings is the zoning laws were intended to make it easier to get some of this stuff done, and it's just been the exact opposite. It's become so difficult to get some of those permits approved here in this county, and we've lost out here in this county because they built a whole bunch of them in Nemaha and Richardson.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because they don't have the zoning laws. And that's one of those things we got to think about a little bit. Right, you know, and I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying just be aware of it.
No,
Yeah.
exactly, and it's a trade. It's always an opportunity cost, always a trade off. But no, like I say, my pipe dream with the whole school district right now is, I guess my personal viewpoint is on this being exposed to like the Pawnee stuff. The Pawnee City School District has had some hectic times. They just lost their superintendent. He just went out and took another job, and that's one thing JCC has, and I want to explain that is, you know, all 3 of them principals are going to be there for a long time. You know, Mr.
Right.
Rother is going to be there today. That's the hardest part about a small school district is keeping administration in place. You have
Continuity of the people. Correct.
I mean, Sterling's a
agree
prime
with
example. After they lost their tenured superintendent, they had a new superintendent. I think every year for about 4 or 5 years.
that. And then you have no continuity.
Yeah,
and then that translates back into the budget. Then.
Yep.
And you know what I'm saying? Because then you have different plans every year.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody's got a plan, you stick to the
Different
plan.
ideas.
You
And
know,
that's why-
and so I guess that's kind of my deal. But yeah, those are kind of some of the key points. And for me personally, like my personal push, honestly, is we're looking into a pre-K through 6 or a pre-K through 8 building And the 52 acres, like I say, for me, it's one thing at a time a little bit.
Yep.
And I'm of the opinion, after fully thinking through the current site and facilities is, and one thing that we are going to look into to make this work a little bit, and I don't know if anything will come of it, is I think of the term, it's slipping my mind.
We can bleep it.
No, centralized kitchen. Centralized kitchens, you might know something
Yep.
about this. To where, like, you prepare all of your meals in one kitchen. Like, there's actually videos on the internet and stuff. This one school district out in Colorado, the centralized kitchen is preparing meals for 50 different schools.
What school district was Shickley? I think it was Shickley Public Schools. You see what they did with their food service? They got rid of the whole entire federal part of it. They don't get any federal money at all. They localized everything. They contract with their beef, their pork, their chicken. They have all their meat. They have industrial production there. So they produce everything, gardening. It's insane to me. And this is their first year. They're going all without it. And they don't charge those kids any money, for the school lunches or anything like that. But also, I think Shickley's like a class D2 school. I think they only have like 40 kids. I think they have 40 kids in high school. So, it's something I think on a big scale, it's not going to work, a situation where you localize everything, it's not going to work. But
I'm not saying just the localized part, like ideally you could do that, but if we were able to, or that's my thing, the centralized kitchen concept, where if we're able to, and that's one of those things in the high school, like we just got done. One of the state fire marshal items was hood vent. And the hood vent's a 6-figure all day long deal, but the fire marshal and code, I mean, at the end of the day, it should have been done probably before we've done it, and that's one of those things I've came across also is, I bring up code and state fire marshal is, and then just the capitalism in general, it gets abused a little bit where the code, we'll just change the code so then we can sell you folks all the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's some of what's happened a little bit and why things are so expensive.
Right.
But
For sure.
that's kind of the deal.
Like I say, my pipe dream idea is capitalize. When we merged with Nemaha Valley, I was kind of half excited about it because it, to me, was a progressive action.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw a lot of school districts, I'm not going to name any specific ones, but they'll hold on to their identity till the day they have no money left. And one of the things I was looking at, and I actually talked to the superintendent of Pawnee about this years ago, I said, what would happen? I said, is it a legal standing point if Pawnee and JCC merged together and operated 2 high schools? And he looked at me and he goes, no, that would work. He goes, Omaha Public Schools has multiple high schools. They have, and he goes, we could do a 2 high school system, but then, he brought up the valid point. You're going to be right back in the same place with the logistical nightmare. Do you have one centralized high school and 2 elementary schools, or do you have 2 high schools and keep them separate, force the rivalry, whatever the case may be? But my idea behind that was, the southern part of the JCC district, you could kind of, push them into another high school building, even them out to 2 class, C1, C2 2 class C2 D1 high schools. And you could, to me, my idea was forcing the old-fashioned competitiveness, because one of the things I thought we were lacking for the longest time, and this is my biggest, harshest criticism of JCC, is I think we are not a competitive enough school district, if that makes sense. We've had you were a part of some of our successful sport teams, but when we have, especially sports, we get successful. That's my point. But we get successful for maybe 1-2 seasons, and then it goes away. And one of the things that drove me nuts at JCC, and I'm a complete nerd about this, was I was an academic decathlon all 4 years, and some of those achievements that I had on that, I'm a nerd. I know I don't want the award, I don't want the praise or anything like that. But to me, it seemed like we focused a very long time on not necessarily unsuccessful. We were looking at our sports, our extracurricular activities, more towards the sports end. We were looking at things that we shouldn't have been looked at. We should have showcased
the glorified.
We should have showcased academics. There's a gal, and she graduated from Lincoln, but she was originally in our school district. She got a 35 on her ACT in 7th grade. And if I were a school administrator, if I were in that school district and had any, I would showcase that. Like, hey, we got smart kids down here. And if I look at a lot of our statistics, Johnson County Central, I believe, if I understood the metrics right, we're still slightly above average for most public schools our size when it comes to certain types of academics. But to me, it almost seems like we're ignoring our academics. I mean, I think JCC, like average ACT score, and I'm not going to quote anything
I
specific,
can't speak to any
but
of
yeah, I'm not going to quote anything specific, but I think JCC is 1 or 2 points higher than the state average for a Class C, for a small school. To me, it's nuts that, and I've seen some changes, so I'm not going to argue with it. The Facebook page, they showcase a lot of academic stuff now, but for years, they didn't. And like I say, and we
So
won't.
this goes into, this is my own personal view, okay? And this is take it for what it's worth. I know everybody's situation is different, but I am very much a two-parent, that word parent.
Yep.
I'm very much a two-person parent, two parents parenting, right?
Yep.
And, and this is one of those things that you're going to get some variation in classes as far as, parents, parenting. I mean, that's one of those things, and it's just kind of the deal. And it's the ebbs and flows from a societal standpoint. That's why I feel like it's very important to try, if you're going to have a baby, you're having a baby, you're having a kid, and you're going to raise that kid. And it takes mom and it takes dad to
And it
raise
takes
that kid.
hope, and it takes faith.
Faith,
You gotta pick
correct.
one.
Yes.
He's waited.
Silly
I played
goose.
that all day.
He's waited a few weeks.
How am I
Dude, he
gonna-
was practicing it earlier, honestly.
I threw it up a little bit. I was scared. Scared to say that.
You're afraid I was gonna get
Oh no,
you.
you're 100% right. I was a young parent, obviously.
Me too.
That
It's
kid's
like,
almost
You
as
got to
old as
step
you
up
are.
and take care of your responsibilities. You know what I mean? I had to grow up real
Right.
fast, but I mean, it honestly helped me.
I mean, and this is kind of the deal, and it's one of those things. A message just like that, is it popular all the time? No.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But is it the right message? Yes. And I think that that's something that needs to be promoted, because it really does translate back into the public school system. I mean,
Yeah.
it really does.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
100%.
That's just kind of the deal. But no, I appreciate it, guys.
A lot of people wanted to know, did Rother just get the job because he's like a hot dude?
Because he's a hot
Is
dude.
it-
That's
all
your-
I
That's
ever
probably
hear about
definitely a
Rother.
plus.
Are you wording personal questions again?
Well, you know,
as the
so
general
this is
public?
one of those
A lot of
things.
people wanted me to ask that. I'm sorry.
This is one of those things, Mr. Rother, and this is where, as it's very important to have a strong board, and you have a strong board. You can take comfort in that a little bit here at JCC. And Mr. Rother went from being the youngest administrator to now he's the senior on the staff. He's the oldest, and it's just kind of how the chips fell a little bit, and that's one of those things. So that's the deal. But no, I don't think his hotness had anything to do.
It might have
Honestly,
had-
I feel like, in a way, I don't know. I mean, he did take on the responsibility, obviously, but it almost kind of like fell on him in a way, like as he like grew at Tecumseh and JCC, it just kind of
That is
match
kind
made in heaven type of thing.
Natural-
like,
a
Yeah,
natural-
yeah, that is
a
kind of cool to
natural,
watch.
natural fit. Yeah, because I mean, I was a part of like his whole growth. Like he was my Title I teacher, and then he ended up being my classroom teacher, and then he ended up, being
Mhm.
He's
principal. He's the
Oh, yeah,
best.
a lot.
He's
And like I
hands
say,
down the best.
He's going to be here till he retires, and that's I would assume he's going to be here till he retires. I mean,
Yeah, let's hope we can keep that guy around for a long time.
That's one of those things. Like I'm telling you, like overall, you have very good quality people up there and stuff. And I mean, that's the deal. So
And I don't think you guys could have made better hires for like the middle school and high school principals either. I mean, Damie's a really, really good guy. He might be young, but he's about his business, and he's easy to get along with and everything too for most of the students. So I've seen him interact with the middle schoolers when I was there coaching and stuff, and he just always seems like he's a straight shooter, but
right,
he's also one that the kids can
Right.
get along with, just like Rother, in a way.
right.
And
Well,
then
I mean, you maintaining control.
Yeah,
That's just
yeah.
kind of the deal.
And then
you
Miss
know?
Bacon, I mean, she speaks for herself. She's definitely going to handle business too.
She
so.
also.
I'll take your word for
I
it,
failed her
Eric.
Spanish
She
class.
does. Wasn't she a Spanish teacher?
yeah, she started out as social
I've
studies.
failed
Wasn't she
that class.
social studies teacher? I think the first year at JCC.
World history.
Yeah,
She hated us. I
Yeah.
don't blame you.
she's a good teacher.
It's one
I
of those
think
things
yeah,
you gotta
she's
be-
In the classroom around everybody, she kind of made us like. She
She was an assertive.
She used
teacher.
this. She used this as like,
We need to.
you know,
Yeah, we needed it. Like that's
as
the
like
point.
this is what's gonna happen if you act like this kid. She
Yeah.
used this as But like anytime I had to deal with her outside of class, she was always one of the sweetest people.
She wasn't
I've ever
afraid to call us out. And like I say, as an
No.
adult, I reflect positively on that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like having
She-
my mom at school.
She kept she kept me in place. She didn't let me run my mouth. She told me to sit down.
But she's also like very caring too. Like she's very nurturing in a way too. But she can, I mean, she could play both sides of the card.
Right.
She's awesome.
off the
So,
clock.
I commend you guys for making those decisions. Those are
Well, this was this is
fantastic
one of
good-
those deals like when it comes to the principals of the building and stuff. That's Mr. Rother, and then that's the deal. Like there was an interview for the high school principal job there, and that's how it came back. Was Mr. Danny was recommended, and as a board, like we're standing behind our superintendent, and that's why we hired him.
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome.
Now the pressing question: are we going to get the actual Mr. Rother one day on this show?
I don't know.
You should tell him
You
how great
can't
we
speak
are.
to that. Well, you're doing a good job here and getting him. You know what I mean? You're doing a good job with me.
I just need to send him a DM, I think. And
I'll put in a good word. How's that?
But that's what we're
I
going
need to
for.
shoot a DM out there and see what he says.
We can be serious when we need to be serious, and that's the important part. Except Eric over here. He's doing his best.
So hard.
As the,
This is the
ho-
most quiet Eric's
I'm
definitely
sorry.
been.
I let it.
as the host here,
I'm
Eric.
watching my mouth as best as I can.
No, that's good.
I'm a moron. That's the only way I know how to communicate.
Oh, obviously I've been sitting here with doe eyes the whole time too. Just
You're kind of sweaty too.
I accidentally had to run a few newspapers and school finances. I hate
maybe I just need to be more educated.
August and September stink at for
I'll
getting
work
a hold
on
of anybody at the school because it's budget season. It's budget season. Don't ask any budget questions right now. Let them get it to the school board first. Then you ask your budget question.
Well,
I learned that so many times the wrong way.
I feel like you want to leave,
Me?
and that's okay. But I did want to ask a serious thing. What made you agree to do this?
To do this here?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
What
think
brought
that
you
you
on?
I
have a
also have one more
platform.
question when you're done with
I
that.
have a. I mean, you have a platform here. You have a platform here to get the message out. Have I been helpful on getting some of the message out?
Very much so.
Yeah, above and beyond
Very much
expectations
so.
for sure. For sure. And I mean,
yeah, very.
I have very
I mean,
low
so
You didn't even
that,
chew my ass yet, but we might get.
one serious question I also have too is like, I don't know if he already asked, but like, again, what made you want to be
be
a
on
president or be on the school board? Yeah.
be on the board or run for the election
Yeah.
was some different things. The 4-day school week. Like I'm not a 4-day school week person. My platform there is I support policy that promotes work ethic. Work ethic is a problem. And,
Yes,
and-
100%.
And it's not.
I hate
It's.
to agree.
I mean,
Are you
it
telling
is.
me my kids aren't going to
Yeah.
work 4 days a week when they're older?
Well, I'm just saying, like, they may not. You
I
know
do,
what
but
I
it's
mean?
4
But there's a lot of
times.
policy. There's a lot of things policy-wise that can be done that support work ethic. A simple thing I will tell you is, do we? And this is just a random example, okay? Not saying anything, but you get up before school and you go to practice, basketball practice, so that the boys can practice or the girls go. You rotate. You get up and go to practice before school, and you practice after school. So that we're utilizing said court all as much as we can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a policy that supports work ethic. You have to get up, little Jimmy, little Jill, to go to practice.
Yeah, instead of
you know?
everybody, I mean,
instead of the
fighting over court time or field time in
Right,
the afternoons,
right.
you
That's
know.
that's a policy. So that's some of the deal. But and there's a lot of policy. And I personally I love policy. Policy as a board person, like every month there's different policies that come down that we review, and some of them we can do some stuff about. Some of them we cannot. Beings if it's passed at the state level, it's basically that's just kind of the deal. Like you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But like I say, I'm happy. So, like I say, one of the issues I've seen with JCC, and it's not really it's not a targeted issue. There's multiple things that are causing people. What last I checked, and Mr. Bolt was the superintendent still. When they had those open house meetings about this proposed bond measure, and hey, we're going to try to do something here. One of the things they talked about was the option rate. I think JCC at that time had over 100 kids opted out of the school district. And you can't pinpoint that to, bad staff, bad facility. You can't pinpoint it all to, you know, I to me, if you put it on
Personal
a,
experience.
if you put it on a chart, you're going to have 5 or 6 big, you know, reasons that are noticeable there. But it's insane to me how many kids we lose. Like, I'll be honest, the reason why my kids don't go to JCC anymore is based solely on the fact that the 4-day school week, I'm not a fan of at all. I think my kids, when they get older, you know, it'd be nice to work 4 days a week. It'd be nice to, you know, be able to do that. But let's be realistic. We're in an agricultural society.
I got
How
my
many of
boots
these-
on.
Yeah, exactly. How many of these kids are going to go into agriculture when they graduate high school? And tell me, how are you going to get away working as a farmer? Are you going to get away with working 20 to 30 hours a week?
No.
You're not going to have a very good
Right.
farm. So you're conditioned, to me, my personal standpoint is you're conditioning these kids to work 4 days a week, and then they
We want
grow
them to
up and-
succeed.
Yeah, you
They're
want
going
to-
to struggle to succeed. A little bit.
Exactly.
That's kind of
Yeah.
the deal. You know,
But,
setting them up for success versus, you know, maybe a little bit of blurriness. You know what I mean?
Mediocrity.
And that's kind of my thought.
And
you
then
know.
there's like I say, I got another issue, but we'll talk that one off camera.
I'll come back another day.
Well, no, this one involves personnel. We can do that one on recording.
We don't also have to record everything.
Yeah, we don't.
We can stop right now.
We can. Yeah, we might as well.
I'll come back another time if you guys are willing to have me back another time as
course.
we
Yeah.
progress a little bit here, because there's going to be another bond coming, another bond election and stuff coming. Like, I'd be happy to come back. And
That'd be
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
That means I have
that'd
to
be
do homework.
awesome. Awesome.
It's good
Promote the
practice
cause.
For,
You know,
practice for watching them.
Yeah. Get you on
I
here.
like it.